and the other people that he's influenced at other conferences are profound. And so we thought that you might enjoy hearing some words of wisdom from Ron, so we've invited him to be our keynote speaker. If I was to read for you Ron's entire list of accomplishments, I'd use up all this time. So I'm going to introduce Ron as a professor of entrepreneurship who holds the Jean Austin Bagley Regents Chair in Management at the Jerry S. Rawls School of Business at Texas Tech University. Ron, I've said this over and over to you again, but we are so honored that you joined us here today. So please help me welcome Mr. Dr. Ron Mitchell.
No introduction, long time. So being from Texas, you know, you have this, what's kind of this reputation goes up to. And one thing about Texas is there's a story from Texas that illustrates almost every point you want to make. So, so we've traveled here. I was joking with Brandon when they were mentioning all the foreign countries that everybody comes to. I'm going to go to them and say, and Texas. And but you see, when people from Texas travel, they have a reputation to live up to. And it seems there was this person from Texas who went to New York City. And things went well for a day or two, but as he looked in the mirror in the hotel in the morning, there was this brown line that was sort of across his forehead. I couldn't figure it out, so he went to the emergency room. So to the doctor, you know, I've got this brown line across my forehead. And the doctor said, "You're from Texas, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, everybody from Texas is full of BS, and you're a Fort Lauderdale." So I brought some extra today. What Alex has talked about in this very generous introduction, thank you so much, is the momentum that's been building in this conference. And of course, there's a story about momentum that comes from Texas. It seems that there were a couple of old boys that were out hunting. Now in Texas, there's no public land except for the national parks. From 90+%, 99% is all private land. So you have to lease the land to go to the hunting. These old boys and lease the land, but they also had it to themselves, so they were taking it. And as the day wore on, they were getting more and more tipsy, and they were kind of wobbling along, but they came to this huge hole kind of in the middle of the field. Just had no idea what it was. And so when he leans over, throws a rock down just to get at the bottom, there's no sound. So they roll the boulder over and throw it down, no sound. And then they saw kind of a fence line over there where there was a railroad tie. So they both pulled out, you know, if we just throw it down, maybe it'll bang on the way down and see how deep this hole is. So they managed to get the railroad tie, throw it down the hole, and sure enough, bang, 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 bang. But then that disappeared. And suddenly there was this rustling over in the grass by the fence, and this goat comes charging out, bounces on its head, does a pirouette, and dives down the hole. And now they're baffled. They have no idea why the goat can get back down the hole. And just then, the guy that they leased the property from drives up in his truck. And said, "Did you always happen to have seen my goat?" And they said, "Well, what did it look like?" He said, "Well, it would have been tied to a railroad tie." Momentum. Okay, so what we have is momentum, and sometimes the momentum isn't in our control, and other times it is. So today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship research. the what and the how. So fortunately, people don't take credit for this kind of thing. But I'll start with the idea that the world consists of two kinds of people, those who divide everything into two groups and those who don't. You can decide what it is you have talking to you today. So today we'll talk about the what and the how. The what is the focus of our research, the content, the substance. What are we going to look at? And then the how is the process of our research. So I'm going to give a bit of an introduction to the what and hit about 4 possibilities, pools from which we can draw the next set of ideas. And then we'll go on to the how, and then the how we'll talk about some of the best practices that are out there that people can choose from. And so and then after the what and the how, we'll have a chance to work together to actually start the conversation in small groups that can generate ideas that will assist later in the day. Because we have it, so Jeff Stamp will be here, and Jeff is a creativity guru, and we'll have ideas that hopefully can build upon what we have prepared ourselves in our group work together. That's up. Alice in Wonderland. Naming something, said Alice to the Red Queen, isn't the same as explaining it. Naming, explaining. A lot of work gets done especially early in entrepreneurship researching, a lot of work was done in the naming of things. The explaining is now where we are. Opportunity to meet with a few doctoral students earlier in the week. And the point that I made to them was, if you're going to think about your career and have one word that describes who you are, it would be explainer. Whether you're a researcher, teacher, or involved in the service mission, right? Research, teaching, service, we are explainers. We draw from the pool of theory and the testing methods to explain things to our fellow beings that haven't yet been explained in the social world. The rising generation comes into our classroom under our influence with the hope that they will explain the world to them in ways that will be highly useful for them in their careers. We serve in our communities. We serve each other, of course, but we serve also in our communities. We use what we know to figure out how to move the community forward by explaining how things might be. Explain, explain, explain. So, explanations in entrepreneurship research. What we can talk about is a bit about where we have been. As I said, kind of in the naming and where we might go. Einstein presented the idea it's the theory which decides what we can observe. So in many respects, the explanations that we have are built based upon our ability to conceive of the things which ought to be explained. So what have we observed so far? Is this an exhaustive list? Sorry guys, I don't have such an exhaustive list. But here are a few explanations that are in the literature. Right? So the entrepreneur in economic theory. And we have, you know, the Schumpeter's and the Austrians and all of the how jobs get created and all that cool stuff, right? The entrepreneur. The entrepreneur in psychology theory. Everything from the ideas behind the entrepreneurial personality, which never did find enough empirical support, to entrepreneurial cognition, which then sort of started down the road of saying, well, maybe it has to do with the thinking. And then the folks who do the meta-analyses who come back and say, yeah, we don't find exact entrepreneurial personalities, but we find that there are distinctions when we do meta-analysis of all the studies of entrepreneurship. So the entrepreneur and psychology theory. A new venture performance and strategic management theory. There's this whole literature that explains how new ventures perform better using certain principles from entrepreneurship or principles from strategy applied to entrepreneurship. And then we have entrepreneurship, or social entrepreneurship, or sustainability. The Colorado State Conference, the SEE Conference, at Puerto Rico or somewhere cool this year. Yeah, so the SEE Conference. So these are places where we have been observing, using theory from these sources, from these pools. We've been drawing, essentially, our ideas from these pools. So where might it go? Well, what we need is theory that can help us to define other ways to observe, other things to observe, ways to think about observing. So I have 4 pools. They're not the only places that we would go, but if, by chance, you are here shopping for some what? For some content to the research for the next projects that you would like to undertake or might consider undertaking. Here are 4 pools from which you might draw. Okay? So, I tried to focus these on where the theory is progressing. So, many years ago, Jeff Stamp said, I think it's, yeah, I'm not going to get a long on you, Jeff, but the idea is that we don't want to be light years ahead of our time. We just want to be 15 minutes ahead of our time. I'll explain more about that later when I give an illustration. But what we want to do is to see where the theory is progressing now and what we can observe so that we can be just ahead enough that everybody's interested in what we're going to be talking about. So here are 4 areas, right? There's decision-making and action. Entrepreneurial action, decision-making. Dynamic entrepreneurial cognition. So entrepreneurial cognition research essentially was kind of a boxology, sort of input, process, output. But the psychology is moved to dynamic cognition. So we need to look at what's possible there. Where's entrepreneurship going in the public space? And so again, the entrepreneur in economics theory, a lot of things in the USA are going to the how are we going to do the jobs thing and get to 3 and 4% growth that politicians have promised. Okay, so what's entrepreneurship going to do in that sense? So public policy, the role of government. Okay, so we'll talk about it. Now these 2 words have only been put together in this combination once, as far as I can tell. And it was by Ian McMillan and Jerry Katz in 1992, and Gerald was venturing when they wrote an article titled Idiosyncratic Milieu. And it really means there are just really odd places that it's hard to get data, but we need to then get it anyway. Perhaps importing methods and techniques from fields that we hadn't thought about previously. So 4 pools from which to draw somewhat. The next places we could go. These are places where theory is progressing. And we might draw from them. So, for example, here's a book, Trailblazing in Entrepreneurship. So, Dean Shepard and Homer Pastel, right? So, Dean goes to Australia every many of you may know Dean is years. He's been just stepped down as the editor of Journal of Business Venturing. Prolific scholar, has some marvelous ideas, but when he goes to Australia, he meets with his Australian colleagues. So his book starts out with a story about what he calls bushwhacking, which is he and his brother growing up on the black sand beaches out in far western Australia. They can take the beaten path, but sometimes they take other paths. It would be harder, but it would be, in a sense, more glorious. And so the point that he makes isn't that we have bushwhacking in the USA. He uses the term trailblazing. So Dean and Holger wrote this book, and the book is, Alex, is it posted or going to be posted?
This is posted, and so on Courseby, you have access to this book.
So this is the trailblazing book, and it gives you an opportunity to look at pathways in decision making and action. Okay, so this is a model from the book. Okay, so just a quick quote from Dean. So Dean contacted Alex and me and said, is there any way that the people on the Entrepreneurship Educators Conference would be interested in this? And he said, oh yeah, absolutely. He said, well, it's available. So this is 300-400 pages. I mean, so it's a serious analysis of where the field is going through the decision-making and entrepreneurial action lens. These arrows mean the mechanisms of entrepreneurial decision-making and action. Okay, those of us who are doing theory work, right? Because we can only observe what the theory permits, so we need theory. What theory has to do is it says, well, what is it? X and Y related. What is the little engine that makes this relationship work? Okay, so that's what the arrows mean on this diagram. So here we have a dotted line around opportunity. So chapter 2 is about generation and refinement of potential opportunity and the exploitation. So there's been a huge research in stream and opportunity discovery, opportunity creation, etc. Cool line of thinking. Venkat, who was the previous editor, Journal of Business Venturing, wrote a marvelous piece in 1997, and then followed up with an AMR in 2000, which essentially talked about the distinctive domain of entrepreneurship. It was much of that focus on opportunity. Dean himself has been fascinated by failure. Okay, so it's an opportunity, but then mechanisms of failure need to be accounted for. Okay, so out of this we get benefits to the entrepreneur, the firm, and to others. So coming out of opportunity, we have operational processes of innovation that bear upon the opportunity core, but also bear upon dealing with failure. Okay, so this book is going to have chapter 4, explain the operational processes. And then 5, 6, and 7 deal with the context within which all of this is operating. There's a natural environment, sustainability aspect. There's the relational environment, all of the social elements that bear upon entrepreneurial opportunity benefiting firms and others. And there's personal and physical environment. So there's one track, right? The decision making and entrepreneurial action. Very, very well established. So Dean says, we emphasize trailblazing as opposed to taking existing paths because we strongly believe that the future of the entrepreneurship field is promising, but only if our research itself continues to be entrepreneurial. The success we have had thus far may lead us to a competency trap. We're really good on this, so we'll keep doing it. We do it even as we end up going out of business. So, competency trap. That is, entrepreneurship researchers sometimes decide to play it safe using accepted theories and methods to answer progressively narrower research questions that are of interest to smaller and smaller audiences. Okay, so the anti-tenure movement in the USA is gaining, right? So why is that? Well, it's because people get tenure and then they start golfing too much. Right? So, like, it's one of those things where we end up with an issue. Like a couple of states have already said, nobody hired in the states get tenure, period. You get hired without it, it's just not happening for us here. And that happened because anybody who's from England who knows cricket, okay? So queer the pitch means stuff goes wrong simply because you made it impossible for everybody else to play. So that's not queer the pitch, okay? Rather, they're suggesting that if incremental research starts to dominate and overtake more trailblazing research, the field could begin to stagnate and lose the essence. We have to be able to accept substantial novelty in the way we question, theorize, and test ideas to develop new and stimulating explanations, us as explainers. So, possible tool number one, if you're interested, entrepreneurial action, decision making. Okay, so, dynamic entrepreneurial cognition. Okay, so I have the honor of having 3 doctoral students here from Texas Tech. One from, so just wave your hand as I introduce you. Kali from Kazakhstan, right? Mohammed from Egypt, and Hamid from Iran. Okay, so we have all kinds of cool perspectives going on. Hamid and I together were working on a monograph, and the architect of this diagram is me. Thank you, Hamid. So, entrepreneurial cognition research used to be boxologies, input, process, output. However, especially social science has gone into dynamic cognition. So cognition is a person in a situation, and the person's cognitions, what's going on in our head, is a function of our situation, okay, which is number 3. I guess I should start with number 1, which is cognition is action-oriented. It is embodied, situated, and distributed. So what does it look like? It means that if we're studying how entrepreneurs think, that this idea of action and decision making we're just talking about is part of the way thinking works in the way entrepreneurs act. It's action-oriented, but it's also embodied. Okay, so I'm sure no one here has had a hangover, right? But if somebody asks you to make some really big decision, as you're trying to sort of make it through that morning, you might be a little short, a little abrupt, a little reactive, perhaps a bit negative. Embodied cognition. Your body actually affects your thinking, right? So this is all real time, action-oriented, embodied, situated, which is here we are, in a particular situation, and all that's going on in the situation matters to us, as well as distributed. What's distributed cognition? Well, frankly, distributed cognition now in all of your minds, because you see a bunch of bubbles up here, or spheres, right? Okay, and that's distributed amongst all of us. And if I were to push the mute, which I don't know how to do. Uh-oh. Okay, so the point is you can still remember the circles, right? That cognition is distributed. Well, what does that mean for the research that we would do, the theories we would approach? Well, we could have action-centric approaches. Here is sort of the action and embodiment, affect-centric approaches. So the emotions. Right? So I was just talking to someone about our colleague in Hong Kong, Roger Fu, who was studying entrepreneurial affect, like emotions. And the study was, you had your cell phone and ping you, if you were an entrepreneur, you had to move a sample ventures. And it randomly during the day ping them with a question. Like, how are you feeling or whatever, and just under 10 seconds you can answer and then keep going. Right? But he had real-time affect data that was going on at the intersection of the action that was happening and the embodied cognition. Okay? We have a colleague, Sarah Sarasvati, who talks about the effectuation, but there's bricolage. There's all of this. Well, we're trying to get something done, and let's see, what do we have here together? So we want to stand up on this and reach this light bulb. Okay, well, here's a chair. I guess I can use a chair to step up on the table. So the point is, I'm effectuating the solution to some problem with what I have around. Right? Effectuation. Entrepreneurial alertness approaches. Here's one that I've been working on for quite a few years, the entrepreneurial expertise approach. So there's this whole literature that has discovered that people who are expert in the field, they do 10,000 hours, and what's the 10,000 hours? So Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers, you may have read, the 10,000 hours puts, why did the Beatles get so good? Because they were playing 24/7 in Hamburg, Germany for 7 years. And then they walk on the stage and go, oh, your guys are good. Well, yeah. Okay. So the point is expertise, right? There's a certain kind of practice. I'll talk about it in a few minutes. Deliberate practice. We practice intensely, durably, and the right content. Practice hard. Practice long. Practice the right content. Okay, so dynamic entrepreneurial cognition. A lot of cool stuff going on in that area. Neuroscience, and I'll talk about it in a minute, but that would intersect with this as well. Okay, so public policy entrepreneurship. So, I just December of 2015, so it's been almost 2 years. No, a year now. We have in Texas Tech program, a student from Saudi Arabia. And a few months into this student's time, he was in my office and he said, Dr. Mitchell, he said, I'm starting to think ahead about going back to my country when I'm done. And see, it's going to matter a lot in the future. Because we're dependent upon a non-renewable resource, and oil, and I've got to figure out what to do. And I thought, well, forgive me, I thought that was a bit grand, okay? But his next sentence put me back into reality. Well, my uncle's the finance minister, and so his uncle's just finished as the finance minister. So Abdallah has finished up his doctorate, has returned to Saudi Arabia, worked actually 2 jobs, he now has 4 jobs, but he's working pretty much before sunrise till well after sunset. And he is now the head of the Department of Private Enterprise Development. So, what did Abdallah do? What we decided we would do would be we would look at, here's something of interest to us all, job creation. And we defined a term that's not sustainable entrepreneurship, it's renewable entrepreneurship. Renewable being distinct because what it means is the money that you put in comes back out to the public person that can be put in. Again, it's a perpetual investment possibility from the government. Okay, so the idea, so we need to go back to the economics, right? So we did and looked at, laissez-faire and then classical and then Keynesian and then monetarist, right? And then new Keynesian in new Keynesian economics, essentially there's governments involved in fiscal and monetary policy. So, being that he's going back, well now he's back in a kingdom where the government can do these things pretty much by decree, what's the government going to do? So we said, well, the government would be setting up the business environment, so the budget, the regulatory complexity, their tax structure. And we've heard politicians in America talking about that. Okay, so business environment policy maturity. So it's not just business environment policy, right? So there's a difference between a cup and the size of a cup. One is just a thing, the other is a variable, right? And that's what our models need to have, is something that varies. So the maturity of the government environment, the business environment policy, innovation policy maturity. So how's IP protection? How is it communicated, platform? In other words, how are inventions communicated to this? Research institutions accessibility. And then new venture creation policy maturity. So ease of financing, ease of starting a business, economic freedom in general. So our hypotheses were, let's look at these as directly related to renewable entrepreneurship clusters. So what's a cluster? Well, movie industry in LA, oil industry in Texas, computer industry in Silicon Valley. But so a cluster, right? So businesses are all clustered together. So you can find these data, and there are just several hundred, maybe thousands or so clusters, and you can look at the job growth within these clusters. So what else is going to be affected? Well, we thought, well, there'll probably be some institutional factors. So competition intensity and the effectiveness of knowledge spillover. So we figured that if we have venture creation policy, the competition intensity is going to affect that before it affects cluster growth. Innovation policy maturity is going to affect the extent to which knowledge spills over from like universities into business communities, etc. Okay, so mediating variable there. And then from some theorizing that I've been working on for quite a few years, we came up with the idea of economic inductance. I called it transaction inductance when I wrote about it. Essentially, inductance, if you're any engineers here, like electrical engineers, so the thing about like a motor, right, is if you have a shaft and you have a winding, you have magnets, and you have brushes, okay, old style motor. And if you want that motor to spool up, you put electricity into the brushes, and then it affects the winding of the coil, which has magnetism, and it starts to spin. If this motor core is really, really heavy, there's inertia to overcome. So what you have to do is you put the electricity in, and then it spools on up. And it's only going to spool up as fast as it can overcome inertia. So if you put tons of electricity in, it just goes blowing off in sparks, because this thing's going to spool up only as fast as it spools up. The rest is wasted energy. What if the same situation existed in geographic clusters? Some places you put money in, and it turns into action almost immediately. It's like a coreless motor. It has the winding around the light aluminum core. You put the electricity in, and zing, it just moves. High efficiency, low inductance. And you have other places where you put the money in, and a little bit goes to somebody here, a little bit goes to somebody there, a little bit goes to somebody else, etc. Reminds me another one of my lame jokes, which if you don't mind. There's 3 contractors. Passed away. Showed up at the pearly gates in St. Peter's, said, guys, I'd like to let you in, but the pearly gates are broken. So I'd like bids, please. And the contractor from New York said, no, he was last. the guy from Idaho said, well, $300 for materials, $400 for labor, that's $700. And then the guy from California says, no, it's going to be about $1,000, $500 for materials, $500 for labor. Okay. And then the guy from New York says, no, it's going to be $2,700. What would that be for? Well, 1,000 for you, 1,000 for me. We hired a guy from Idaho. Okay, so inductance, right? So we have a problem that the money doesn't go into the job creation, okay? And location. So there's a direct, we say there's a direct relationship here, and then we had some moderators that we hypothesized. Okay, so we didn't really know. It was just fully saturated at the beginning. Okay, I'm going to skip through because I've explained the whole model, so each of those. All right, so these are the results. Now, guys, this was one of these hierarchical linear models that has clusters nested within, locations nested within, okay, and like the formula is, I don't know, 300 or so terms long, okay? So we had an ag economist, shout out for ag economists in the room. We had ag economists help us with that, but we explained 23% of the variation in job growth in America over 7 years with this model. Okay, so this is serious new territory. Okay, so define renewable entrepreneurship, cluster growth, and so this is what's supported. These three things bear upon it. Inductance bears upon it. Inductance also, it moderates this relationship. Intensity doesn't play, okay, and knowledge spillover effectiveness only plays if inductance is taken into account. So guys, what are we saying? We're saying we want to be 15 minutes ahead of our time. We have the data, we have the indexes, so these are all publicly available indexes, we just use them to test the model, and bang, right? So, I mean, that's serious explanatory power. Public policy entrepreneurship. The idea of renewable entrepreneurship, not sustainability entrepreneurship, which is fine, like, let's not forget that. But renewable means what you put in and come back out. And it'll be used again and again and again. It means public policy can work in entrepreneurship. Fun, right? Okay, so there's my 2 words. Idiosyncratic milieux. Okay, so Macmillan and Katz. Without theory sophisticated enough to permit modeling or simulations, the whole process of entrepreneurial research slows down. What's remarkable looking at epidemiology, criminology, paleontology, or entrepreneurship research is the tremendous wealth of techniques and models used in each field. What is present in the first 3 fields and sadly missing in entrepreneurship are bedrock theoretical models and established empirical links between theories and case studies, experimentation, or modeling using key variables in research settings. So, Ian and Jerry basically say, we've got to be building these conceptual models using other methods. And these other methods are such things as simulations, experiments, and the whole neuroscience stuff. Okay, so without going into depth, one of the doctoral students in our program and I went in and simulated hundreds of thousands of transactions, trying to test Herbert Simon's thesis that the external environment is far more impactful on results than is the internal environment. And we did an experiment which actually provided our prior probabilities from the internal environment. And so it's not just a simulation of something against something, it's actually run it forward from this is what the internal environment looks like, then vary the external environment, it's like what enters and what exits, right, into the transaction setup. And what we found was, if I'm calling correctly, like 3 times the impact of external environment as compared to internal environment. So yes, it's all about training entrepreneurs, but it's also about training entrepreneurs to pay close attention to what's going on in their external environment. Experiments. Well, it's written up, and if you want to talk about the experiment, I can give you a okay? Neuroscience got together with the neuroscience, and we were talking about this morning. What is going on? Why are entrepreneurs constrained the way they're constrained? And especially, how does emotion and entrepreneurial motivation, how is it affected? In other words, if the stimulus comes in through the eye, you see something, in the under split second, that emotion blossoms, right? So see and act, before you can even conscious of it, you're already engaged, right? Affect engaged. So what's going on? Pinball's bouncing around through all kinds of, and we got all the terminology right. I can't remember it all right now, except that it always refers to the midbrain, right? The amygdala, reptile brain, right? Cerebral cortex, upper, but the midbrain's the mammal brain. I remember the episodes of my life. So as long as this brain's been running, the storage has been happening here. Been building up what's called episodic memory. It's the point of reference. Okay, so what's in episodic memory really matters. Okay, and it enables any constraints. And so we say, is there an entrepreneurial personality? I don't know, maybe, but maybe the question is there an entrepreneurial midbrain? And what's in that? Like, I don't think everybody's asked that. Certainly the neuroscience has been, strap on the electrodes and give a stimulus, see what part of the brain lights out. Okay, so that's okay. But remember, that's back in naming, not explaining. All right, so let's talk about explaining. And if we're explaining, we really want to say, what the heck's in that midbrain? Because it's like affect for sure and motivation. Ping, 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 always referring to the midbrain as it pings to the next, gets midbrain, then pings out, gets midbrain. Okay, point of reference. Anyway, the idiosyncratic milieux, places we could go to extend theory. Okay, so we've done what? So how? A process of our research. Okay, so let's Einstein again. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. So what does that mean? The simplicity in the house. Like, I'm going to reason, right? Overwhelming. Actually, what do editors say? What do authors say? What do mentors say? So this is me going, we have all these colleagues, and everybody wants to know what the editors say, what the authors say, what the mentors say, and this information is impacted. It means it's in some heads, but not others, and only some of it's in some heads, and whatever one. So while I was in that service mode, doing explaining in the service mode, this was an explaining project. When I was chair of the Entrepreneurship Division, we took on a project called the Research Excellence Project. And we raised, with the Entrepreneurship Division, it's like, we don't say this out loud in the academy because like there's so much money that gets raised and used in the Entrepreneurship Division office every other. So, but it's like, I think it's $350,000 or $400,000 increase. This is such, yeah. And we had two sets of conferences at the University of Connecticut where we invited the journal editors from all the bigs that publish entrepreneurship. So AMJ, AMR, PG Management Journal, No Business Venturing, EKP, PG Entrepreneurship Journal, and we invited the authors and just published it. And we invited people who were mentors, who were senior people in the field. Last year, Howard Aldrich was here at this conference, but he was also at that conference. So Howard was being a mentor there, but also Mike Hitt and Tricia McDougall and others. So After that was done, we had it all recorded, transcribed, edited, shrunk down to reasonable form, and in a book form. It's here now for us today. This is the house. What do editors say? What do authors say? What do mentors say? Right, so this part of my presentation, I'm going to refer to this, right? These aren't here for my benefit. So I don't want you to storm the stage, but I would like everybody who wants a copy. Okay, so I have this little fund in the Bagley chair. So these are paid for by the chair and available to you to have now for the next part of the presentation. So if you want one, please just come up and get them. I'm going to pick up in 2 minutes. Okay?
All right.